welcome to another episode of Throwing Bagels. This is Chris Douglas. I'm joined by Kevin Mooney. Kevin, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Chris.
And Jason Hamo. Jason, how are you?
Good.
Wow, what a special episode we have lined up for today. I've been waiting for this for a long, long time. I can honestly say this next guest that we have on today is a friend of the show. It's none other than Joe Yerdon. Joe, welcome to our podcast.
Hello guys. It's very wonderful to forgive for breaking down the fourth wall. Very nice to see your faces. For a few of you, it's been a long time. So this is I was more offended when you asked if I would want to be on it. I was like, dude, name the day. Tell me when, and try to kick me off the show because you can.
That's funny. That's great. Well, we appreciate you coming on. I just want to give some background. Joe is the co-host of Maintenance Day with Joe Lysowski of the Buffalo News, and you guys can listen to him and them wherever you get your podcasts. And also the founder and creator of Noted Hockey, a Substack that you can all read. So it's wonderful, by the way. I've done both.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. It's nice to have you on board. That's for sure.
You do a great job, Joe. I mean, you do an excellent job. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Okay. I tune those people out anyways. Nice. Anybody who tries to be a doofus at me, I'm just like, get out of here. Just mute, block, get away from me.
All right. So let's get into the Sabres because that's a team you cover out in Buffalo. They're in a playoff hunt. You know, speaking of your Substack, you had mentioned that there's this 3 goalie strategy that they're doing.
Yeah.
Craig Anderson, Eric Comrie, and the greatest name in hockey right now, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Mm-hmm.
And right now they're going with Luukkonen as the hot hand. Is this something they're going to continue to do for the second half of the season?
I think they're going to ride it as long as it works, honestly, which it's not a normal strategy, like to say the least. The only other time I've seen teams carry 3 goalies is college hockey. Like that's it. Although Marty Biron did tell us there was a time while he was in Buffalo that they had 3 goalies there. It was like him, Mika Norinen, and somebody else that I'm forgetting. But Marty hated it. He's like, none of us get the minutes, none of us get enough like what we want. It's just tough. It's tough on everybody. And but this rotate, I mean, geez, Luukkonen's making it impossible to sit him. Like he's playing so well. And he's playing the way everybody in Buffalo's wanted him to play the last 2 years when he showed up, which he kind of has, but he kept getting injured. But he's in fantastic shape. He's fit. He's the whole 9. And something clicked with him at some point this year where suddenly he was just playing instinctually as opposed to, oh, I got to be in this spot. I got to be in, I got to be ready in my, reverse VH, whatever the hell the goalie terminology is for what they do. It's no longer butterfly and stand up. It's just, it's all kinds of dumb stuff. But now he just reacts, which, I mean, you're a goalie. Reacting is good. But he's also getting better at reading the plays, reading where the puck's coming from. Seeing how opponents are trying to set up around him, and this is the guy who won Finland a gold medal at World Juniors. He looks incredible, and it's the best case scenario, but also the worst possible situation for everybody on hand because you feel bad for Eric Comrie because he's supposed to be the number 1. Craig Anderson's, he's closer our age than not, so that's. Not usually a good thing in the NHL when you're north of 40, but he's played great, playing once a week. That's a great gig, honestly. Here, play 1 game a week, rest up the rest of the time. You're gonna play again in another week. Here's $1 million. Like that's perfect. That sign me up right now if I could do anything athletically, but like they can't not do it this way because Comrie came back from a lower body injury and. The thought was that when he came back and he was healthy, is that they're like, well, they got to send Luukkonen back down. I was like, no, you can't. You literally cannot. Like he's won 6 in a row. You can't send him down. Can't do that. You don't do it with a hot hand. And they're like, well, what do they do with Comrie? And I'm like, they're going to keep 3. And they're like, why would they do that? And I was like, they're playing 4 games a week for the next month. Like, what do you want? So it's made sense. I'm going to be really curious to see how they handle it once the schedule lightens up because they go from playing 15 games in 28 days through January to playing twice in 2 weeks with the All-Star break thrown in the middle. Like, they've been like not having morning skates. They've been not practicing because you can't have the gas tank empty. So, but man, I'm really happy for Lukin, and he's a nice kid. He's 24, however old he is.
That's
but
a kid. He's a kid to us.
Everybody's a kid to us, except Craig Anderson. He's not a kid to us. He's like our classmate, basically. But it's listen, Eric Comrie, like, I'm rooting for him because he might be one of the nicest people I've ever met in the NHL. Just an easy, like the most easygoing. You could talk to him about anything. Like, he got going one day before Christmas about how his wife was watching all those Hallmark holiday movies. And he's like, these are the worst movies I've ever seen, guys. I can't believe I'm watching these things every night. And I was like, well, just watch something else. And he's like, well, we go to bed about 8:30. And I'm like, how old are you again? How old are you again? He says, 28. I'm like, maybe not even 28, might be like 26. But I'm just like, okay, man, like whatever. But then I'm reminded the other day, he's the heir to the brick furniture fortune in Canada. I think it's his dad is like the founder of Brick Furniture. Like, they have many stores across Canada. It's $1 billion family. And he's like one of the heirs. Like, his was like half brother, step brother is Mike Comrie, who played with the Oilers back in the day, was married to Hillary Duff. Like, this guy never needs to need to do anything with his life. He just kind of be on cruise control. But no, he's a damn good goalie, and he's a damn good guy. So I don't know, man. It's wild. On maintenance day, we've been trying to not do goalie talk like since the summer, but like we can't avoid it because it was the biggest problem. Now it's a problem in the other direction because now they got too many guys and they're all playing well. So it's tough.
Let's talk about really one of the breakout players on the roster. That's a monster by the name of Tage Thompson. 6'6", 6'7" center. He is really developing into an unstoppable force on the team. I mean, how instrumental has head coach Don Granato been to his success, and as far as where he is right now?
He's the guy who came in with the prior knowledge of where he can play, how he plays. I mean, he coached him when he was 16, 17 years old at the NTDP program, the US program, which he wasn't able to be the first line center on that team because there was a guy named Austin Matthews on that team. There's
that guy.
Yeah, he was there. Matthew Tkachuk was on that team. Like, just a very top heavy loaded squad. And, he was playing third and fourth line minutes with that group, which of course you were. Like, imagine the numbers you'd have to put up to be like, you know what, Austin, we're going to put you on the second line today. Like, come on. But he did play center then. And he did play a little bit of center when he played in college at UConn. But Tage Granato puts him at center, and everybody before that season started was like, what are you doing? This guy hasn't done squat for 3 years, and you're putting him at center? You took the C off of Eichel, and you're going to trade him, and you're putting this guy at center? What are we doing here? Like, what's happening? And then he scores 38 goals last season. And now he's got 32 now before we're at All-Star break. Like, well, we got another week of games. We got there's 5 games before All-Star break. How many is he going to finish with by the time he gets to Florida? Like, it's wild, man. It's unlike anything I've ever seen watching NHL hockey. Like, never mind as a professional, just as a fan forever. Like, you don't see stuff like this. And, Buffalo being what it is, everybody's like, oh, it's just like Josh Allen. And I'm like, guys, was Josh Allen traded for somebody and then was the third string quarterback on the Bills and then came out of nowhere? No. I was like, if anything, Tage Thompson's Tony Romo. And they're like, no, Tage is better than that. I'm like, yes, he is. But like, it's the same kind of thing where it comes out of nowhere. He had more goals last season than he had career points going into last season. 38 to 35. Like, it's insane. Like, it makes me stammer. It's crazy. But I mean, the thing was, and I just wrote about this recently at Noted Hockey, which my timing, I could probably stand to use somebody to be like, maybe pocket that one for another time when Brian Miller's not getting his number retired. But I talked to the guys, Sabres wise, and one of the lead scouts at NHL Central Scouting of what their first impressions of him were. Obviously when he comes to the Sabres, he's a new guy. And he comes in, he's a 6'7" dude, and you're like, what's going on here? Like, this tall drink of water going on. We just had they just had Ryan O'Reilly, who was a great player, who got traded for saying he hates losing, which was a weird flex by ownership, but everybody's opinion was like, geez, this guy's hands, like, he's schooling everybody in practice, like, he's toe dragging guys, he's just like, he's making us all look stupid every day in practice. And we would see it in practice too. We're just like, man, how this guy get hands like that? Well, when he went it his first year going into the program, when he arrived at the program, he was 6 feet tall and he had all the hands and the skill and everything. By the time that season ended, he was 6'5". So, right. So, right. So you go from being like, oh, this guy's going to be a pretty good center. Like, he's going to be out there. Like, that'll be nice. And now it's like, oh boy, now we got a power forward. And that's the mistake a lot of people made along the way with him, because a guy that size, how could he not be a power forward? Well, he's adjusting to his body, A. B, he couldn't keep weight on for years. Like, the metabolism was sky high. Weight was, eating like crazy. Weight doesn't stay on. Now he's figured it out, and he's strong. It's easy for a guy his size, and he's wiry. He's got this, seemingly skinny arms and legs, to just kind of get folded up if he gets into the corners. Doesn't happen with him now. Like, somebody ran afoul of him. Oh man, what a pun, against the Ducks. Oh boy. Wow.
But
man, I did not plan that one, and I wish I did. And oddly enough, it was an old teammate, Nathan Beaulieu, where Beaulieu kind of gave him a shot down in his end of the ice. And I was like, geez, the referee doesn't call anything, of course. So we get back down, Ducks are trying to get some shots on, and then Beaulieu gets the puck and then sends it back down, sends it down to the corner. And then you just see Tage come over, wham, thud, Beaulieu's on the ice, and play stops, like a couple moments after that, goalie covers, whatever. And Beaulieu gets up and like, he just skates over. He's like, what's this? What are we doing? I thought we were cool. We're boys. And Tage was like, basically saying like, don't ever do that to me again in my end of the ice, because he thought he could take advantage of him, because the last time Nathan Beaulieu saw him, he was wiry, skinny kid, not all that strong. Now he's strong, and now he's one of the best players in the NHL, which I can't believe still. It's mind-blowing after seeing so many years of garbage hockey in Buffalo, to see a guy who had he was a first round pick. He went 26th in the draft. There's some pedigree there. His dad was a pro hockey player, Brent Thompson. Everything was there. It was just a matter of figuring it out along the way. And you get 3 or 4 years into an NHL career. Granted, one of them was wiped out for shoulder surgery, and you're watching him play, and you're just like, I don't know if this is ever going to happen. You'd see flashes of it here and there. Anytime he played in the AHL, it was like, oh yeah, he's good here. Because then you started thinking, well, maybe he's AHL good. Maybe he's not NHL good. Stuck with it. Now Don Granato comes along, puts him at center, puts Jeff Skinner on the other side of him. Oh boy, Alex Tuck shows up after his shoulder is healed, and then suddenly they got one of the best lines in the NHL. Who nobody predicted that. Literally nobody predicted that.
How have the Buffalo Sabres as an organization react to the situation with DeMar Hamlin when, everything that happened with him?
That was really tough on the Sabres too. Granted, at a different level than with the Bills. Obviously, it's Bills, it's their teammate, it's a guy that's that they see every day, all that. But the Sabres guys and the Bills players have gotten to be I don't want to say like totally tight, but like, it's not how it used to be back in the day when the teams would schedule press conferences against each other to try to steal. The Bills would do it to screw the Sabres over, and the Sabres would just be like, cool, great, thanks for sticking it to us again, guys, that's awesome. But now they work kind of in concert. Obviously same ownership helps that out, but like Sabres guys go to the games, they'll go see the players, they'll go see the guys after the game. I've seen Josh Allen after games occasionally. If he comes, it's hard to miss him. He's 6'5" and a monster. You see a guy like that stand in the hallway outside after a game, you're like, what the hell's that? Oh, it's Allen. Okay. Deion Dawkins and Rasmus Dahlin have some kind of like funny friendship. Like it's very silly. Dawkins taught Dahlin the gritty, and then he did it after he scored a goal one game. Like, it was, okay, All right, man. Like it's, but like, Tuck grew up outside of Syracuse, grew up in Baldwinsville, and he was a huge Bills fan, huge Sabres fan growing up. I mean, he's right in that prime time where it was the 05-06 Sabres. So like, obviously he was a Sabres fan. It was a little tough on the Bills then, obviously, but he was a Bills fan, and like, he reps the Allen jersey anytime they're doing something crossed up, and like he's gotten to know some of those guys, but there's a camaraderie there. So when that happens to Hamlin, the whole team was really messed up from that. I think they were on the road at the time that they were in Washington. Yeah. And they really hunkered down. Like they didn't have the players talk after practice or after the game one night. Not even Don Granato spoke. Like Kevin Adams talked after the game in Washington. It was like, because what the questions are going to be. It's like, yeah, nice game, guys, but let me ask you about what happened here. And those guys, I mean, that's hard on them. It's hard on everybody when that stuff happens, especially when you're close. So, but that game in Washington, the guys, they made up, PR director Nicole Hendricks got some t-shirts made, love for three. Everybody walks in wearing that. So that's good. By the time Hamlin came out of it, the first game that happened in Buffalo after he was good to go, or I mean, even if he wasn't good to go, it was going to be the first game in Buffalo. It happened to be a Sabres game, but he was awake. He was talking to people. Everything was good with him finally. And, instead of having a moment of silence for him, they had a moment of celebration. So the whole place is just cheering and going crazy. So it's doing little things like that where, that's nice to do. And working together on it. I mean, the one Buffalo thing that happens here, it's kind of corny. Like I get it, but there is something to it when it comes to major league players like this. I mean, the Bandits get involved with it a little bit, but it's it's obviously a little different with indoor lacrosse compared to the NHL and the NFL. But the Sabres guys did a lot of work with the community after the Tops massacre in May. Kyle Pozo was big on getting involved with that, and all the other players were like, anybody that was in around town at the time, because Pozo lives in Buffalo now, like he lives here full time. But like anybody who's in town, they got involved with that too. And then after the blizzard happens here, and 40 people die in Buffalo because there's ineptitude with everything, and it was a terrifying storm. But like, and again, the Sabres had the first game after everything was done with the blizzard. So it's a lot. It's a big emotional toll on everybody, but the Sabres they've done really well with it. And when it came to Hamlin, man, it was really cool to see the support for him and to see that kind of just universal support for a guy who died on the field and was brought back. I mean, it's incredible.
As we speak right now, we record this on Monday nights. The Bills lost to the Bengals yesterday. How is the city of Buffalo? How have they responded to a loss like that? What's the mood like out there?
Surly. Yeah. I'm gonna say surly. Because when you put it in the big picture, this is the third year in a row with a bad playoff loss. It just happened to be the first two were against Kansas City, and the one last year was inexcusable. But the fans are, I mean, it's hot take central right now for a lot of the fans, which is funny. It's funny. Like, I watch the Bills. I'm not a fan of the Bills, but I watch them, and you have to keep tabs on them here. You can't not. But watching people just freaking out about coming up with all kinds of insane ideas, I'm just like, yeah, good. It's good. Get out of your system now. Wait for the draft to come up, and then you get stupid again, or somebody hires Leslie Frazier, and then you throw a parade for that, or whatever happens, or Ken Dorsey becomes the Panthers head coach, and then they throw a party for that happening because he wasn't that great of an OC, if you ask me. But it's but like, yeah, man, Allen's contract extension starts next year. So he goes from having whatever the rookie contract cap it was, like 7, 8, 9 million, whatever, I forget, to 43 million against the cap. And if you look at Spot Track to see what their setup is for next year, they're already 5 million over the cap. So these last couple of years was when the window was really open to win the Super Bowl. And honestly, last year was the year to have their best shot at it, and they blew it. That's not to say that since they would have rolled over Cincinnati. I don't think they would have. I think that would have been a much harder game. But the Bills were clicking a lot better last season than they were this year. This year, there's a lot of flaws.
Let's switch gears and we're going to talk about you, Joe. We're going to just talk about you.
Crap. Okay.
Noted Hockey, the Substack. How long have you been doing it? I'll tell everyone how long you've been writing, how long you've had this. Give us a background on the new subscription plan that you have for it, and tell us about what you're doing about donating portion of the revenue.
Yeah. So I fired it up in October 2021, late September, October 2021. Let me just say it that way. It's so I don't trip over myself. I started it then with the intention of just getting back into writing more often, because it was June. I think it was June. Yeah, June of 2020. 3 months into the pandemic, the shutdown, the whole thing. When I was laid off by The Athletic, that was, they laid off 8% of the staff, gutted a lot of the hockey coverage. I mean, sucks for me, but there was a lot of really great beat guys that just they knocked out because they weren't getting the subscriptions in those places. They're like, it's not worth having it down there. I'm like, okay, cool guys, nice idea, nice website you got here, but that obviously affected me a lot. I mean, that the Athletic job was one that I had chased after them for like a year to get involved there. Like once it started up, I was like, hey, emailing the primary people involved. I was like, hey, listen, if you come to Buffalo, I'm ready. Like, let's do this. And obviously they're not writing back to tell me because they had no plans. And then suddenly they announced, they're like, hey, we're going to go to Buffalo. And I get right back on the horn. I'm like, hey, let's go. I'm ready to do this. And then when you don't hear back when that happens, you're like, okay, well, they're not looking at me. So that's cool. And then the first wave of people they announced, I was not one of them. And I was really upset about that. Not angry, upset, just like, all right, is this the end of the road? Like, am I done writing all that, done writing? Because I was really scraping by doing stuff for NHL.com and for the AP. And then summer times were hard because you have to pick up a second job when there's no sports going on. You have nothing to cover. So like all that stuff happens, the shutdown and that gets really bad. And, I was really depressed for a lot of it. And another part of that was my mom had gotten sick with MDS. It's a blood cancer. It was May 2019 when she got diagnosed. So, my thoughts are always at home. And then we got a pandemic and it's like, oh, well, mom's getting treated for cancer. So nobody from the outside can go see her. So, I've got all this time to myself. Like I could drive out there and be with the family, but then it's like, no, I can't because can't be bringing in anything from the outside. She's getting chemo, the whole thing. So it's like really totally isolated here on my own. So I've got to chew on losing my job, which given the circumstances with, how they were paying out for unemployment and the severance package I got, all that stuff, like I was okay money wise, like that was fine. But, having money and then no place to go, your mom's, you have family sick and, you're not doing anything. Like that's a lot of idle time. And you're just kind of like, all right, well, what the hell am I doing myself here? So when things ended up loosening up and things got, I don't want to say better, but when things improved a little bit, and the NHL got back to normal, I was like, all right, let's get back into this a little bit. So I started it up. I'd seen some people that were doing it. I had some opportunities to join some other sites, but I did not like the setup that they had there, and the pay structure and all that stuff was just very tenuous. And I was not in it to jump on board with somebody else to only have it, get the rug pulled out from underneath me again. I was like, I can't get down with that. And so I read up on Substack and I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. And hockey coverage in Buffalo is pretty tight because there aren't a lot of people that do it. The Buffalo News does it. Obviously, The Athletic does it. They're still doing it. Matthew Fairburn's their guy now, but and WGR does it because, well, it's flagship station. They're going to. But as far as professionals doing it and writing about the team, there wasn't a lot. And, as weird as it is, I was like, well, I'm a professional. Like I am, but like I never thought of myself that way. I was just like, I'm just some idiot writing about hockey. But I was like, but wait a minute, I'm a professional. I should do this. So I started up with the plan to eventually turn on paid subscriptions, but it was like, I had to kind of reestablish myself that I was doing this, that I was writing. And at the time, the Sabres did not give me a press credential, even though I worked there for 8 years. And
Garbage.
They knew me.
That's ridiculous.
It's
Outrageous.
Yeah. Well, somebody with the Sabres organization eventually got fired within a few months after that. And then suddenly things got different the next year. Weird.
Interesting.
Weird.
Yeah.
Funny how that worked out. But for like that whole year, so it's like I'm just like a jackass writing from my couch, which funny story. That's how I started. But doing it as, trying to keep up the face of being a pro at this, there is no way I could charge people when I'm not there. Like, if I'm not there and I'm not allowed on press conferences to ask questions or whatever, what am I asking people to pay for? Like, there's no reason. So we get through the year, season ends, and then that person got fired, and then things changed over the summer when I approached the Sabres again, because I was like, hey, so let's have a conversation again. I was like, I'm still doing this. I would like to jump in. And they're like, well, yeah, we don't see a problem with that. And I'm like, you don't? I was like, we had this conversation 5 months ago and it was a big problem. They're like, no, well, things are different now. And I was like, okay. They're like, besides, you got the podcast, you and Lance have the podcast. So, you're doing work. Like, you're pro people. You're a pro person doing this for professional purposes. Like, okay.
See, they think you're a professional.
Well, they finally did. Yes. So at least everybody else agreed. The one person who may not have agreed was no longer there to step in the way. But I fretted forever, and I'm talking months, about turning on paid stuff because it's the whole self-esteem, not self-esteem, but just who's going to pay for this? Like, I don't know who's going to pay. Like, I have no idea. Like, who likes my writing? I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I've got a fair number of followers on Twitter, but it's like, that's free. Free's easy. Like, that's that makes it a lot easier. But I was like, well, and I had, after I was let go by The Athletic, I had a lot of people approach me to say, hey, whatever you're doing, I'm in, I'm paying. I was like, well, that's very nice of you, thank you. But then it's like, can I, how's this going to work? Can I make a living out of it? Can I, how's it going to go? But it took me months to do it. Like, from the start of the season, because training camp starts up and I'm like, all right, let's get it started by October 1st. Let's do that. Start of the season. Let's do this. And then I was like, I don't know. I'm not ready for it. And I was like, okay, November 1st, we're going to do this right on. Let's go. Time to get this done. Yeah, maybe December 1st, get it in time for Christmas. And then people, it'd be a good thing. People are, more willing to buy in, whatever. Yeah, let's wait a little bit on this. And then I think it was right after Christmas. I was finally like, screw this. It's on, buy in if you want to. Like, if you don't, I get it, but I'm going to try to make it worth your while. Not try. I am going to make it worth your while. Like, there's no try here. It's a straight up Yoda stuff. Like, there's no try. There's do. And the response was incredible. I was over 100 subscribers, I think, within a month. To which Substack was very happy about. Substack, when you're doing it for free, they don't really care what you're doing. But once you turn on the pay and you're providing money for them, they like that. Suddenly they're like, "Ooh, you're on our radar now. This is good." Because they take 10% off the top, which it's fine. It's fine. Like, they're they're providing the web space for me. That's fine. But now if you go to the page and you go to sign up, it'll say Substack bestseller on there. I'm like, cool, neat. I've never been a bestseller at anything. This is great. But starting it up, it took a little bit of time because last March my mom passed from the blood cancer, and that was the beginning of March 2022, and I had started that Substack at the end of 2021, and things with mom started getting a little rough around December. Right after Christmas, beginning mid-July, I think things started getting a little bit dicey, and then it went really fast after that. So like, my mind was not on writing anything. Like, I was just like tuned out. If you told me I had, won like the Indy 500 or something in like, in January, or Daytona 500 last February, if you told me I won that, I'm like, I don't know, I wouldn't remember. I have no idea. You lose all sense of time. You lose all sense of what you're doing, because everything is just a haze, because your thoughts are only in one spot. So, that happens in March, and, you get through the summer and you get thinking about everything, and you're just kind of like, all right, well, how can I do something? Because it's a helpless feeling when it's something like that. Because there's nothing you can do. Doctors did everything possible to help her out. And it's just, sometimes, things happen. She got an infection, and then they had to treat the infection, which then opened the door for the cancer to be like, oh, now we've got an opportunity. Your body's fighting something else. That's what happens.
Jeez.
It's hard. It's hard. When things came around in the summer, and my family, we went down to South Carolina just to kind of take a deep breath after everything had happened, and kind of go to the beach, see some other family down there, just kind of get away from it. And we after that, I was able to just kind of like shake the cobwebs out. There's a couple of things that I did down there that were semi-sports related ish. And so we got through that. I was like, hey, okay, that kind of gave me a little bit of an itch. Like, I got a tour of the Myrtle Beach Pelicans ballpark. I was like, I'm going to Myrtle Beach, what should I do? And somebody's like, go to a game. And I was like, cool, I'll go to a game. There wasn't a game. So the person that runs their social account, like, they're like, hey, come down for a stadium visit, check it out. I was like, okay, cool. So do that and like get the whole, behind the scenes and everything the Cubs were doing to make the park better and all that. And like, but that got the itch back into me, like, okay, sports. All right, we can do some more sports again. And I was like, right, I'm not doing baseball. Like, I'm not gonna become the Buffalo Bisons guy out here. Like, that's just not happening. But no offense, it's not offense to the Bisons, but like, I like going to Bisons games and having beers and dogs and stuff. And I can't do that if I'm writing about them. So
Right.
let me be a fan of something for once. But it got me back motivated again to like get back in writing. And then I had that conversation with the Sabres, and they're like, all right, yeah, credentially, you're good. I was like, okay. I was like, I'm going to be treating it the way I always have. I'm going to be there all the time. I just hope you know that. They're like, oh, no, great, good. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be annoying. I'm just letting you know. And but like, they've been nothing but great. It's such a night and day atmosphere down there. Obviously, the team winning helps out too. But just in how everything is carried on, it's incredible. But being down there and getting back in the spirit of things, because it'd been like, what, 2 years, really, a year and a half, essentially, that from being in that mindset, that mode of doing that stuff. And then I was like, okay, let's get the Substack going again. So I started writing more, and like, everything was free. I was like, just read it, check it out. It's going to be there regularly. Let's go. And then, so when it came time to turn on the paid stuff, I was like, right, fine, screw it, let's do it. And yeah, it's been a great response. And, one of the big things that I was doing with it was taking 10% of subscriptions and donating it to the MDS Foundation, because I had to do something. Going back to the helpless feeling, like you don't know what to do. And like, that was something that I was like, this is within my control to do, so I'm going to do that. And fortunately, like, the response early on from everybody with the subscriber stuff, like I think the first donation is like $450, $500, like something along those lines. It's incredible. It's awesome. It's so heartening. It makes me feel good that I can make a donation like that. But it's so heartening to have the support of the fans, either here in Buffalo or elsewhere, that just, they like my reading, they like what I do, and they like that different things that I'm doing, because I'm trying not to be boring guy with coverage, because there's enough of that. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's the least I can do, and then stay involved, and it's going good right now. So but now it's the switch flips where it's like, well, now it's got to stay good, and it's all up to you, buddy. So keep the machine rolling.
No pressure at all, Joe.
At least I'm my own boss. So like, if I screw up,
right.
it's like,
That's
I fire me.
Chris, I think I don't. We should mention. I think Joe is one of the few people who actually knows what throwing bagels. It's like he's
That's
witnessed the
right.
throwing of the bagels,
That's
haven't
right.
you, Joe?
Yes. Yeah. Oh boy, howdy have we. I think Chris and I were at the game that might have started the backlash against it. One of the I don't know if it was I don't think it was a playoff game. Ooh, was it a playoff game?
It might have been a playoff game.
It might have been a playoff game. Yeah, because there were definitely Plattsburgh fans that were throwing bagels out after this on the second Oswego goal.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And Chris and I caught him. We're like,
this.
that kid right there, he did.
Yes.
And like he just like snuck away and like went to the top of the section. I'm like, we're like, where's security? Like that guy, like that's it. Referees didn't care. Referees don't care. They just saw food hitting the ice. They're like, well, we warned you. It's a penalty. And of course, Plattsburgh scores immediately on the power play, and then sayonara after that. But
yeah, it was over after that.
What fostered your interest in NHL journalism? Like, where did you get started?
So I got started in it basically as something else to do when I was producing radio. I was like, well, I want to write again. I want to do some writing again. So I just started blogging, like had my own like Blogspot site and was writing about like whatever was going on in the NHL. And was just, kind of just saying stuff, talking garbage, whatever, just, but like snarky, well-written, snarky. And then, just kind of going from there. And it's kind of how everybody was doing things like in 2008, 2009, around that time, 2007. I think I started doing that in 2007. So while I was at Clear Channel, there was the guy who was like our program director of 980 Fox Sports 980, saw that I had a hockey blog. He's like, dude, why don't you write something for us? I was like, okay, sure. Like I'll write like how often do you want something? He's like, I don't know, like once a week. I was like, cool, done. I'll do that. So I try to do a lot of what I was doing on my own site there, but like a little bit more professionally written, still kind of snarky and whatever. And I got some of our graphic illustrator people involved to make Photoshops for me, stuff like that. Because I was a clueless moron that didn't know how to do any of it. So, but I started doing that. And then I think it was like a couple months later, program director comes back. He's like, dude, he goes, outside of the photo galleries that we have on the site, he's like, you have the most hits out of everybody. And I was like, well, I'm marketing beyond the Albany area because I can't market it here because you won't give me a show. You won't let me talk about any of this stuff on the air, or like do a podcast or anything like that. So I was just like posting links everywhere. I was just, whatever, man, like this is what I'm doing. And he's like, wow, this is amazing. So what helped that out though? And I say help, I couch that with very careful terms. The Albany River Rats bus got into a serious accident coming back from Springfield or Lowell. Like it was, middle of hockey season, so it's winter. And there's a part of I-90 in Western Mass where you go through it. If the weather's bad, it is frightening because there's no lights, there's nothing, like the roads are always bad. But there was a part and the bus like skidded off the road. Pretty rough accident. Some players got banged up. Was scary. Nobody was seriously injured, thankfully. But that happened. So I wrote about it for the Fox Sports site. And then sure enough, that was getting picked up because they're looking for stuff written about that in Albany. And like, I didn't interview anybody. I wasn't doing any of that kind of work. I was just, writing, blogging, just like, hey, this stuff happened. This is scary. Here's why I think it's, this stinks. And then it started getting picked up by a couple of places, and the links got everywhere. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's got my name on it, like my actual name, not like, whatever my Blogspot handle was or whatever I was using there. But I pitched doing like a weekly, like half-hour hockey show. And the program director, the overall like cluster program director, he's like, well, how are you going to sell that? And I was like, I don't know. There's a handful of hockey shops here that would be pretty psyched to have like a handful of hockey fans listening to the show and having their shop getting, mentioned for a 30-second spot. And he's like, well, you got that guaranteed? I go, no, like I can't sell something I don't have yet. Like, what do you want me to do? He's like, well, yeah, I don't really see how this works for us. And I'm like, all right, man, like keep playing the same like pre-tape Cigar Dave garbage on the weekends or whatever the hell you're playing. I don't know. Like nobody listened to the station unless there was a game on that like I think they carried Yankees games. I think it was Yankees or Mets. I forget. It was Yankees. Now that I'm thinking, because I had to run the board for some of those things. So oddly enough, producing all that stuff is how I got to know about Brent Axe. I know he was on recently, and because we carried all the Syracuse football and basketball games, so I heard Brent's voice all the time, and I was like, wow, these guys are really good. Like, the whole crew there. And I was like, oh, it's kind of awesome. And then, fast forward to, me moving out here and covering the Sabres, and Brent Axe starts following me. I'm like, well, life's funny. Life's really weird, man. But like, they just shot down the whole thing of like doing a quick program. I was like, dude, I can record this. Like, I don't even have to do it live. I can plug it in there. Like, I produce. I know how to do this. I know how to do everything. Just let me do this. And they're like, nah, I don't see the reason. So, but I ended up getting laid off by Clear Channel, January 20th, 2009.
Haven't we all, man?
Right. You haven't made it in broadcasting unless you've been laid off by Clear Channel. Like that's the fact of life. But that was the first really big layoff. And they chose inauguration day, Obama's first inauguration day, because it was never going to be in any headline in any newspaper anywhere. So they took the coward's way out and fired 2,800 people company wide. And like, cool, thanks guys. That's neat. But so I was like, well, I got nothing to do. I'm just going to keep writing. So I just kept writing. And that was 2009. And then 2010, I started writing part-time with NBC, during the playoffs. And wrote a little bit more and more. Granted, I was getting paid $7 a story, mind you, 2009. Jesus. 2010, sorry, a little bit more recent, being paid $7 a story. And then my buddy Brandon, who was like the head guy on the site, negotiations went south with him and NBC, and he was like, I'm leaving. I was like, well, okay. And then NBC called me. They're like, hey, do you want to run it? And I was like, yeah. Like, what's the pay? And they tell me the pay, and I'm like, okay. it beats $7 a story, and it's actually like a full-time wage. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm in. And then ended up writing on the site for, what was it, the 10-11 season I started, and my last season writing there was 13-14. So yeah, it was there, and things got dumb there, but I wrote so many goddamn stories on that site.
Joe, it's been really great catching up with you. We hope that everyone tunes in and listens to this one. It's going to be we had a great time. I don't know about you guys, but it was great catching up, and the stories from Oswego, the stories from Buffalo, and all the news, recent events. And I'm sure we'll catch up again.
Yeah.
Check out the Substack.
Yes, notedhockey.substack.com. Check out Maintenance Day on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, it's there. It's myself, Lance Lasowski of the Buffalo News. It's all Sabres, so if you're not a Sabres fan, you might wonder what the hell's going on. But that's it. And Bleacher Report too. Yeah, I'm doing that too. Like, I'm all over the place, man. You can't avoid me on the internet. I'm sorry if you tried to, but I'm there.
Joe Yerdon, one of our classmates from Oswego, joining us on the Throwing Bagels podcast, and as we mentioned, one of the few people that actually has been there for the throwing of the bagels. So we that was a lot of fun. And
great talking to him. Haven't spoken to Joe in a long time. It's good to see that he's in a good place, and he's working with the Sabres now. So I'm glad to see it.
Absolutely. Agreed.
As we speak, we're kind of coming off a real bummer of a weekend with the Giants losing to Philadelphia in football, which Chris has his thumbs down on the Zoom.
I don't think the Giants actually went to Philadelphia. I don't think they were there.
They showed up.
It wasn't the Giants.
They showed up. They
were there in spirit.
I mean, good God, that was terrible.
Do we think they were going to be in the second round of the playoffs?
No, in fairness, of course
into
not.
The season.
Yeah.
I was expecting, I thought 5-12, 6-11, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yep.
You get a reasonably high draft pick, maybe you go for it. But 9-7-1 on the season, and you beat the Vikings in the opening round on the road, and now you go into a buzzsaw in Philadelphia. I mean, you kind of knew that this was not going to be a magical run.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of felt after that 4th down call in the first quarter, when that didn't pan out, the game was over at that point.
I've heard people say, "Oh well, Brian Daboll was a gambler all season. He had to go for it there." No, he didn't. You're down 7-0 already. Punt the ball. Hopefully you pin them deep into their own zone, and maybe you get them to get a 3-and-out, or you get them to punt at some point, and you get the ball back, and maybe you can tie the game up at that point. Like, no, now you give them the ball in the 40 some odd yard line, and they come down and score another touchdown. You're down 14-0. That's the game right there.
Yep.
Game's over.
I think my favorite part of the weekend was not the Giants game, was not the Bills game, was not the Kansas City game. It was the Cowboys losing the way they did, and Elliott probably taking the last snap of his Cowboys career and just getting trucked was my favorite part of the weekend.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. He's a shell of himself now, by the way. Like, what happened to him? He just completely fell off the face of the earth.
Well,
like,
I mean, they run him anymore? 1 million times a game for 5 years. Yeah. I mean, and that's what happens. The ending is he gets struck by a San Francisco defender.
Oh my God. That might be his career in general at this point.
We do have a great guest coming up next. We do this, by the way, every other Wednesday. You can expect to get your podcast downloaded wherever it is: Stitcher, Apple, Google. Where are we now? I think we just added
Spotify.
Amazon.
We're pretty
Amazon
much everywhere.
Music, Spotify, you name it, wherever you get your podcast. So our next interview will be with Houston Astros broadcaster Robert Ford. He handles radio games for the Astros, but it's the backstory that's interesting, because Robert was a kid from the Bronx and then went to school at Syracuse University, and then wound up broadcasting games for the Binghamton Mets. So he's got a very cool background, and we looking forward to really having him share his story about all the work that he did in the background and helped him get to where he is today. So it should be a really cool interview.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Check us out online. We are at throwingbagels.com, and you can follow our podcast from there. And if you have any questions, if you have something you want us to talk about, or just a question for any of the three of us, please send us an email, throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jay. Great.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Great conversation as always. And we
Good night.
will be back at it again in a couple of weeks.